What do we need to feel safe enough to connect with one another? As we explore this practice of deep listening in October, what do you and I need, one-on-one or in a community, to feel truly safe enough to settle, listen, and share deeply with one another? Do you trust me? I found myself on the wrong side of a conversation recently. Have you ever had that experience where you're with a group of wonderful friends who are saying something beautiful and lovely and optimistic, and you're the one in the group going, everything's terrible? It's just me or anyone else? Okay. So the context. This was a quartet of us in seminary, and these three incredible, compassionate, huge-hearted, brilliant seminarians I've gotten to know over the last few years, and I'm so excited for where their ministerial journeys are going. That's the context. And in our small group for this class, we were asked a typical seminary question. How does the world work? Go off in your small groups now and discuss. Report back in 30 minutes. So we go into our Zoom room, and amazingly, within 3 minutes, we realized we all agreed the world is woven together in an interdependent web of coexistence. And we should have left it there, but I troubled the waters. I said, okay, since we have 20 more minutes, what is the fabric that weaves us one to the next? And I told you these are three very compassionate, big-hearted, brilliant Unitarian Universalist ministers in formation. What is the fabric that weaves us all together? They, of course, said, love. Thank you. That's what the right answer was supposed to be. That was not what I said. I just meant at like a subatomic particles level, we're all of one being. I couldn't get there, and so I had to decide, Steve, do you just shut up, go along to get along? Or is there a fire shut up in your bones and you have to speak? And so in that moment, I realized I trust these three people. Inherently, I feel safe and connected and regulated with these three people, so I'll speak what's on my heart. I don't buy it. I said, I think we're connected, right? My air is your air in this room, but I think we learn to stitch love over that subatomic particle connection. Can you help me understand why you think we're all connected inherently by love? And so one of my profound, compassionate, big-hearted colleagues said, if you look at a toddler and the way they just run open-handed to hug you, we start out with that truth, and the world wears us down. Oh, now I understand where we disagree. That has not been my experience with toddlers. As I've said on this pulpit, I've raised 1 million kids, and this is not me punching down at toddlers, okay? I love toddlers, but it is not my experience that they are inherently and always love. I see some laughing. Good, I'm not the only one. This is going to be awkward if you all just sort of did this at me. I said they're adorable, they can love, their capacity to love is amazing, but they also cut the line, they also push, they also lie, they also sneak, they also steal. They are figuring out this world, and we are teaching them, oh, I know, if you're in Wisconsin, you might say, oh, I noticed that you're cutting the line, we take turns. In fact, there's a multi-billion-dollar industry of books and TV shows and movies dedicated to teaching your toddler how to share, how to say please, how to say thank you. Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, Blue's Clues, Barney, Bluey, Peppa Pig, How Does a Dinosaur Go to School? All of this industry that helps support the message because it's not inherent in my 2 or 3 or 4-year-old's mind that everything would be loving. I said, put it this way. I have a 4-year-old at home that I love with every bone in my body. But let's conduct a moral experiment. A moral experiment. Let's say I bake a tray of fresh hot chocolate chip cookies, and I put them on a plate where he can reach them. And I say, now buddy, these are for the whole family who we love. So I'm going to leave them here, and when we finish dinner, we can love eating cookies together. Don't touch them. Do you trust me? No, no, son, I don't. I'm pitting his desire against his love, and that's not fair to do to a 4-year-old. I feel bad even coming up with the experiment. My wife is an early childhood special education teacher, so these are the sorts of conversations we have at dinner. When she was doing this certification, maybe a decade ago, I picked up a couple things from her classes. There is a sentence that changed my life. I know some of you write down things during sermons. This is the one to write down. It comes to us from the educator, social worker, and thought leader, Robin Goebbels. Children who are regulated, connected, and feel safe behave well. Children who are regulated, connected, and feel safe behave well. Because she's a master teacher, she frames it in that positive language, but it makes more sense to me to frame it in the negative version. If your child is dysregulated, disconnected, or feels unsafe, you might not like the behavior that comes next. I use this as a diagnostic with my kiddos. If they are pushing or cheating or eating all the cookies, are you dysregulated? Or do you feel disconnected? Or do you feel unsafe? I used this teaching college. I use this with family and friends. I use this with myself. Steve, I say to myself, I noticed that you just yelled at that medical billing person on the phone. And while that's understandable, do you feel dysregulated, disconnected, or unsafe in this moment? It's a great, great rule. At heart, I think what my seminary friends wanted to manifest into reality, what most of us want, is that safe, connected, loving space to be fully present with one another as we were in that Zoom room, to be able to listen to one another deeply because we already know that we're loved. But we live in a world where we often feel unsafe, disconnected, dysregulated, where we don't trust. It is hard to get into this practice of October's deep listening if you don't trust that other person. I've had 100 conversations with Unitarian Universalists in the last week where one sentence in we start talking about election anxiety. So let me just name that is in the room. A profound worry, a sense of dysregulation, a sense of disconnectedness with your own neighbors, a sense of feeling unsafe. My neighbors have lawn signs that make it very clear that they are voting differently than I am. My next door neighbors. It is hard to be a node in the great forest when you feel like the trees next to you share wildly different values. You feel your roots contracting. And it is easy, I think, for my neighbors to get swept in the platform of their candidate because that candidate is arguing that they should be furious because they're no longer safe, because they don't even know their own communities anymore. Their pets aren't safe. So I worry, and I hear the worry. I hear the worry in our city, in our state, in our nation. And then I open the newspaper to get out of that worry, and then I worry about the wars, and then I worry about the hurricanes. The prison system, the health crisis, it's too big. I feel overwhelmed and despair. I stop my deep listening. I stop my deep connections. How can I fix the whole forest? I'm just a tree. Our good news today, there is, comes from Adrienne Marie Brown. Tune in to the prevalence of spiral in the universe. What we practice at the small scale can reverberate to the largest scale. Or as she puts, small is good, small is all. You can't save the world. I'm sorry if that's new. I can't save the world. We'll put it in first person. But I can be present with another human being here, now. I can't raise every child to stitch love around their connections to one another, but I can try every day with the kids in my home. I can't have a trusting, connected, regulated, loving relationship with the entire world, but I can learn how to do that better with a few folks. And maybe as we practice it over and over, we can see where that fractal pattern goes. Because, I don't know about you, but I've tried despair, and it ends up looking like navel-gazing. So let us practice. I invite you to breathe in and breathe out. And breathe in and breathe out. Feel your grounded, settled, rooted nature. Feel your connection to others in this space. Feel the safety of being held in love here in this moment. This is how we behave well, which is to say, how we put love at the center. This is how we show up with a compassionate listening presence for one another. Church, this community right here is a laboratory for life. The great UU theologian James Luther Adams puts it this way: church is a place where you get to practice what it means to be a human. Here we listen and sing together our hymns, listening to the contour of the melody, the rich harmony of voices across octaves and ages and genders and experiences. Here we see a member who is theologically happy but not yet connected to his people, and we invite him into a group that changes his life. Here, as the hymn says, we create circles of kinship where all who speak here feel they have been heard. Here we listen and breathe together in the silence of meditative contemplation. We turn our thoughts inward, we notice our feelings, and we hold a container for ourselves and one another. Here we listen to the stories from our worship associates and ministers and weave their voices with ours. Here we listen to one another, yes, in the cross pew chatting or in the coffee hour catch-up, but more deeply in our forum, in our book clubs, in our justice events, in our spiritual development groups, in our theme circles. We hold one another's stories in compassion and grace. In a world that very often says, look, man, I don't care how you're feeling or what your story is here, I just need you to do this job. Here we flip that over. Church is where we come to reorder our world, to say, how are you feeling? Tell me your story. Knowing that that act of listening to one another deeply is the only task that truly matters in the end. What we practice at this small scale can reverberate to the largest scale. Here is your work for this week and all the weeks to come. Check in with yourself through the day. Am I feeling regulated, connected, and safe? When I'm unable to really listen to another person, when I want to jump in on their sentence, when I want to run away, when I want to fix them, when I don't trust them, am I regulated, safe, and connected? Or what would I need to feel that way? This internal regulation, which is as much spiritual as it is psychological, opens us up for that possibility of small, real, deep connections. And maybe, just maybe, one day the patterns that we make in the fingerprints of our one-on-one connections will spiral out to the galaxy. Do you trust me?